Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, I'm back with a new video in time for the Halloween season. I've put together 15 movies that I feel are very underrated or underappreciated. So I just wanted to share this list with you guys. Maybe you'll see a few in here that you haven't seen before. There's a chance of that. There's also some other really popular ones I'm sure you're well aware of as well, but some that I felt I needed to include on this list. So let's get into it. Okay, so there's a lot of underrated horror movies out there, right? I put together all kinds of choices and I basically narrowed it down to about 15. I had a few more and I had a few less, and I thought I had more than 10 that I wanted to talk about, and I thought, all right, well, let's cut it off at 15. So it's kind of a weird number, but whatever. It sort of works, so we're going to go with it. All right, so none of these are in any particular order. This is not a ranking video by any means. These are just movies that I enjoy that I feel are either kind of shit on a bit or underappreciated. They don't get much spotlight or much attention, I find. Well, most of them don't anyway. But there's definitely some in here that just have to be mentioned because they have to be mentioned. Okay, so one of the first ones I'm going to talk about came out in the year 2000, and it is called The Gift. So The Gift stars Cate Blanchett. It has a really good cast, actually. Like, Keanu Reeves is in this movie. He plays one hell of an asshole. He does a great job. Hilary Swank is in it. Greg Kinnear is in it. Katie Holmes is in it. Just all kinds of great actors. Giovanni Ribisi is in it as well. He is really great in this role. But this is a movie that not a lot of people know about. Like, this was actually written by Billy Bob Thornton. Seriously, Billy Bob Thornton wrote this movie, and it was directed by Sam Raimi, of all people. So that should tell you something right there. But not a lot of people even realize this is borderline horror. Like, it has some pretty scary, chilling scenes here and there. And it's a great story, and again, a fantastic cast. So if you've never seen The Gift, you should really check it out, because it is a great movie and a good watch, and it definitely has some of those creepy scares in it that you wouldn't expect. You know, I'm going to be saying this a lot, flies under the radar. So if you've never seen The Gift, for sure check this one out. It is damn good. Okay, so the next one I have to bring up, and there's a few of these in here, but this one has got to be brought up because this is one that has been shit on for so long, and it is Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. Now, this one obviously got crapped on when it first came out because it wasn't Jason. This is after the final chapter, after arguably the greatest Friday the 13th film we've ever gotten, and it was an imposter Jason, as you know, so that was not well received. And I remember when I was a kid, I thought that was kind of dumb, so I didn't like it as much. Oh, it's not really Jason. So it's immediately you take that away, and it just takes so much wind out of the sail of an otherwise really good movie. Like, everything about this movie, I find, really feels like a Friday the 13th movie. It has everything in it. It has the awesome kills. It's got certainly the Jason killer look. I mean, he's wearing a pair of coveralls, so he looks like a little bit of cross between Michael Myers and Jason, but definitely a slasher. Definitely the same sort of, camp feeling that Friday the 13th has. And I think anytime I watch it, it feels so Friday the 13th to me. And going back and looking at it now, knowing we just don't get these beautiful 80s horror movies like this anymore, I appreciate it a lot more now, like back then, not so much, but nowadays the new stuff that's getting made just isn't the same. And this really has a feel like the old ones did. So I just have this new appreciation for it, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's different, and yes, I know it's Roy, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a great Friday the 13th movie. I really think it needs more love and a little more attention than it gets, because even to this day, I'm still seeing people crapping on this movie, like, oh, it's so dumb, but it's really not. It's not way different than some of the other great ones we got, and like I said, it has that feel. So It's definitely one that I think should get a little more recognition these days. All right, and while we're on that topic, let's discuss briefly the elephant in the room that is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. This is an old DVD version I just pulled out because it's easy reference. The good one I have upstairs with the nice TV that I was just watching the 4K. But boy, I love that. I've always loved that poster. That's great cover art, isn't it? But again, we've talked about this a lot before. Halloween 3, totally shit on when it first came out. No Michael Myers. People lost their shit. What are you giving us? What is this? Something we're sort of reliving a little bit with Halloween Ends now, as I've discussed. This is a movie that just kind of, I think people finally started to get over that fact that Myers isn't in there. They sort of start to understand the fact that they were going to do a Halloween series once a year that really had nothing to do with Michael Myers. It was just going to be called Halloween and be some kind of a story. I still like that idea. That's a great idea. But of course, no Michael Myers after such an incredibly powerful hit with the 78 film, and of course Halloween 2 being such a great movie. Well, in my opinion, I know some people adore it, some people don't like it. I think it was great, but anyway, I was definitely among the people who were pissed off that Halloween 3 didn't have Michael Myers in it when I was a kid, and I didn't give it a chance at all, which is kind of what I'm seeing a lot of people doing with Halloween Ends, right? So this movie is definitely one of my favorites these days. I just watched it the other night for its 40th anniversary, and man, it's I'm glad we have it. It's a really fun movie, and I love watching it every year. And I can't say enough good things about it. It really has a lot more love now, so I know it's not something that is nearly as underappreciated as it was, but it does still get shit on from time to time. Like, I have to keep that picture I have of my Halloween 3 shirt about Tom Atkins meeting your mother, perhaps, at some point, if you're not a fan of this movie. Yeah. So I sort of keep that handy for those negative comments when somebody starts ripping on it. I just share that t-shirt because it's a damn good movie, right? And I mean, I can't not mention that. Not Halloween 3, man. It's just, it defines underappreciated, or it certainly did. It's definitely come a long way since then. But for sure, Halloween 3 needs to be mentioned. This is something that really was underappreciated for a very long time, and it only has more recently come around as this cult classic fan favorite now that we've all sort of grown up and got over the whole fact that Michael's not in here and can see the movie for what it is, and it's a really fun, kick-ass Halloween movie, man. Okay, so next one I was going to talk about, I don't have the copy of the movie out because it's in the box set up there, and it is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, that came out in 1994, and in my opinion, it's way ahead of its time. I mean, the very idea that Wes came up with of bringing Freddy into the real world and finding a way to bring back all these characters, you know, especially Heather, you know, to be in a new film, playing herself, really. You know, that was a really neat concept. I mean, to this day, it stands up as being pretty cool. There are a few things I don't like about it. That sort of irk me a bit, but it's definitely one of the better Nightmare movies. Great story, great concept again. Can't say enough good things about Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I definitely think it needs more attention and more praise for what it was. Because, I mean, 94, that's 2 years before he did Scream, and that sort of flipped horror on its head and set off a chain reaction of all these different Scream-like movies. But New Nightmare is a really cool, unique concept, and I think it is often overlooked and forgotten. So, yeah, give some love for Wes Craven's New Nightmare. That is an awesome idea and a super underrated movie. So if you've never seen it, if you are a Nightmare on Elm Street fan, of course you've seen that one. It's pretty unlikely you haven't, but maybe give it a watch again. It's pretty awesome. It still holds up to this day. Okay, next up in this same category I wanted to talk about. And I mean category because we're kind of in those same films I've been talking about. I figure I better throw this one in too before we get into the stuff that's a little more unique. And this is a movie that has very recently grown on me more. And I'll explain why. This movie that has grown on me a lot more, that gets a lot of hate, is Scream 3. Yes, Scream 3, one of the only ones that has a solo killer. As you know, this is another case of the third Scream movie coming out pretty quickly. We were kind of saturated with the first one. Everybody loved it. The second one was kind of clever. And then they brought out the third one, and it wasn't as good. And everybody kind of, oh, this is kind of dumb, you know. And I remember watching it thinking, this is so silly and stupid. And they're making the stab movie and everything, right? So instantly, I didn't like it. I thought, oh, it's not very good. It's not like the other ones, blah. You know, it was kind of forgettable. You know what I mean? And over the years, I only watched it a couple more times here and there. Not very often, you know. Just kind of if I was exploring the franchise kind of thing, I would throw it in. But ever since the fourth movie came out, which I'm not a big fan of, and the fifth one, the new one that came out earlier 2022 here, I've grown to appreciate the third one a lot more. And I'll tell you why. It's not because the other ones were so bad, although mind you, I really didn't like 4 very much. But the new one as well, of like the things that were lacking in those movies, I feel like the third one actually has, you know, but it's stuff that I didn't notice as much because I was comparing this to the first two, which I feel are both quite good movies. Obviously, the first one's amazing. So when this came out, I mean, when you only have those first two movies to compare it to, you know, you're like, it stinks, right? And the fourth one comes out. It was different. Not really my liking, like I said. The fifth one, very recent. Again, not bad, but a lot of them are missing that feel that the first two have. And I feel like when you go back and watch the third one, it really has that original kind of feel with Scream. Like everybody is all just about the same age. A lot of the same characters are there. The same kind of stuff is going on. It's sort of that whodunit atmosphere, but it feels like we kind of went back in time and got another sequel. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain, but for some reason, I really appreciate it a lot more than I used to. I really used to think this was pretty terrible. And I know it's still not the greatest movie in the world, but I like it a lot more than I did with all the little things in it. It was just nice to go back, watch it again, and kind of get that feel like the first ones had that I feel some of the newer ones like 4 and 5 are kind of missing a bit. All right, so next one I was going to talk about is another one this one is fairly well known in the horror community, but I feel like it doesn't get a lot of attention. And it's a great movie, and it's a movie that came out in 1985, and it is called House, starring William Cott. I think some people call him William Cat. I thought it was Cott, though. Anyway, it's a Steve Miner movie, so he directed it. And you know, Sean Cunningham also produced it. And I believe Harry Manfredini did the score, didn't he? Sure he did. And the story is actually by Fred Decker. So it's pretty cool. It has a lot of horror legends, really, that are involved in this. But it is definitely a horror comedy somewhat, but it still has some pretty freaky scares in it. It's one of these movies that I find it kicks around, it pops up every now and then, but it doesn't get this love and attention that I feel like it should really get. It's a great movie. I really enjoy this movie. I watched it 100 times growing up. And yeah, I think it really needs more love. And once again, I just have the DVD here. Well, I will always enjoy House. It is a damn good movie. It's a good time. It's fun, and it's kind of scary, too. So it's well done. This is something that I think belongs on this list and definitely needs some more love. So shout out to House. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's great. All right, so next one I was going to talk about is, again, part of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. The other one I wanted to discuss from that franchise that is clearly underrated and underappreciated, and it's a great fucking movie. It is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddys Revenge. This one is controversial because it's like a body horror movie, and it's the only one that's unique where Freddy comes out into the real world. And he comes through Jesse, you know? And, you know, of course, it's widely known as being one of the gayest horror movies, they said, you know, because there's a lot of innuendo here and there. There's the baseball diamond fighting between Grady and Jesse, and the pants going down and stuff. And, you know, when I was a kid, like I said, I was watching this when I was about 10 years old, and religiously for years after, and it never dawned on me for a second. Even the weird pub he's hanging out in, and his gym teacher is sort of an S&M guy. He's got his little leather vest, and he ends up getting, you know what happens in the movie. So that was a little weird. And I mean, looking at it when you're a lot older, and you're kind of going, yeah, I could see where they're thinking, because there's a lot of things here and there. But honestly, it never even crossed my mind as a kid. I got to see it from an unjudgmental lens, you know, just the movie for what it was, and I really liked it. I thought it was cool. I think one of the only things I didn't like was Freddy, his claws coming out of the fingers, because I love the look of that glove so much. It was so cool that I was hoping we'd see the glove, which we do a lot in that movie, but there are some scenes, of course, where he's just got the blades coming out of his fingers, and it looks a little odd. But I would say Freddy has never ever looked more scary than he did in Part 2. That makeup is kick-ass. I believe that's Kevin Yeager. I think that's how it's pronounced. But definitely a terrifying Freddy. He looks very witch-like. Skin is just gnarly on him. The eyes are really sunken in, as you can see. It's very, very much like that. Yeah, like it's underappreciated. It gets shit on a lot. Like people say, oh, it's stupid. And again, I think it's a really great film. It's a lot of fun. All right, so moving on to the 8th of 15, I guess we're on. I selected the 2003 remake, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, this one it's fairly well received among fans and stuff, but again, I don't think it gets enough love or it's really talked about enough. It's really hard to beat the original. I mean, the original 74 is so iconic and such a big deal. You know, I understand why there isn't a ton of attention directed this way, but this movie was goddamn good. I thought they did a great job remaking this. This is probably my favorite remake. It's certainly up there, real high, because it's well acted, it's suspenseful and scary, and it's just everything I'd want in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And I like the way it's shot. It's a great looking movie as well. And excellent cast. Leatherface is cool and scary in this one as well. I really enjoyed it. So this one I would have to put on this list as well, that it is pretty underappreciated for attention, I guess. I know people in general seem to like it, but again, it's just something I feel like doesn't get a whole lot of talk or exposure, but it deserves it. It is a great Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. If you've never seen this remake, do yourself a favor and check it out. All right, so no coincidence here. The 9th one I'm going to talk about here is actually called The Ninth Gate. So this is a Roman Polanski movie, and it stars Johnny Depp. And this could be one that maybe you've never seen before. Maybe you've never even heard of it, which is a possibility. I'm sure a lot of people have long heard of this movie at this point, being how it's a Johnny Depp film. But this is one that kind of flies under the radar a bit, and it is one that I've always enjoyed. I love the way the story is told. It's beautifully shot, and it's a really intriguing story, very interesting. I thought Johnny Depp was fantastic in it. And really, I have nothing bad to say about The Ninth Gate. It's certainly one of my favorites, but it's a very, very interesting movie. It had me hooked, and I always recommend this one to people. So if you've never seen this, for sure, check it out. The Ninth Gate. starring Johnny Depp, came out in 1999 by Roman Polanski. Okay, next one is a bit of a classic here. And it's been remade already, of course, and I don't know, there may even be a series or something coming. I don't know, but this is a beauty called The Hitcher from 1986, starring C. Thomas Howell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and of course, Rutger Hauer, who is just an amazing actor. He is sorely missed. I wish he was still around. He was such a badass actor, and he played the bad guy like nobody could, you know what I'm saying? Man, he was awesome. But this movie has some amazing suspense in it. It's this cat and mouse sort of thing going on with this hitchhiker, if you've never seen it. And it's really good. I really enjoy it. You know, if it's been remade, that the original is probably pretty damn good. That's usually the case with any remake, and this is the original. So if you've never seen The Hitcher, I highly recommend it. Again, this is one that I don't think gets talked about enough these days, and definitely is underrated. So you want to see a good classic horror movie that's full of suspense and keeps you interested, check out The Hitcher. All right, next up, this sucker is super underrated, and I've talked about it plenty of times before. This movie is called Trick or Treat. It came out in 1986. It's also called Ragman. I think that was some other title they used. Probably had something to do with licensing for Trick or Treat or something like that. But as you can see underneath, it says Trick or Treat right there. But for those of you that don't know it, it is a movie that came out in 1986. It's sort of a hard rock headbanger type movie that stars Mark Price. Mark Price played Michael J. Fox's best friend on Family Ties, Skippy. But this movie does star Mark Price. It has some cameos from Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne as well. But it is a really cool movie. If you like 80s movies, if you were into hard rock or metal at all and you haven't seen this, I'm surprised, because it was made for people like you. I would think most people that were into metal probably heard about it, but a lot of people didn't. But I'm sure a lot of people that weren't into that kind of stuff probably never even took a second look at it. And it's a pretty cool movie. I find it's really fun. It has that Halloween atmosphere. And Sammy Kerr is quite the villain. He's really interesting. And I wish there was a way to see a sequel to this. This is one of those movies that there could definitely be a sequel because of what happened in it, to get, you know, if anybody was recording any of the stuff that was on the radio or that was played that particular night, that's all you need just to bring them back. So, okay, so next underrated one I wanted to talk about is one that I have loved since I was a kid. This is Creepshow 2. No, not the first one, actually the second one. The first one is adored by everyone. The second one doesn't really get as much love. And I understand it is not like as good as the original. It has 3 interesting stories that I really like, and I watched the hell out of this when I was a kid. This one, as you can see, is not open. I actually never opened my Arrow copy. It's, of course, a region-locked copy anyway. I know apparently they've made a 3 and a 4 or something, but I never saw them. I didn't even hear about them until years later. You have 3 really good stories in this, I think. I mean, the first one when I was a kid I thought was a little bit on the slow side, but I appreciate it more now that I'm, you know, shall we say, more mature. The Raft was probably my favorite story, and The Hitchhiker's pretty good too. Thanks for the ride, lady. Sam Whitemoon, who's just obsessed with himself, Mr. Narcissist. Look at this. Look at this, sweetheart. Tell me this ain't a movie star. What, are you kidding? They gotta make me a movie star. Hey, as soon as they see this hair, they're gonna say, Sam, get over here. Get in front of these cameras. There's 100 million women out there just waiting to run that hair between their legs. He is such a narcissistic little pig. Great character, though, and well acted. Fantastic stuff. I really like this movie. I don't think it gets enough attention or love either. because it's obviously overshadowed by the juggernaut that Creepshow is. But I really like Creepshow too, man. I really enjoy this movie. It is underrated. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a good time. All right, well, we're through a dozen. And these last three that I left on the end are three that I really, really like. And these are three that you may actually have not heard of. Or a lot of them you probably haven't seen. Perhaps all of them, I don't know. Some of you may have seen them all, I'm sure. But in general, these ones aren't quite as popular. And the first one I wanted to talk about is this sweet movie that came out in 1990, starring Lou Diamond Phillips and Jeff Kober, who is just amazing in this role. And this movie is called The First Power. So Jeff Kober plays the pentagram killer in this. So he is a serial killer who ends up getting something called the first power. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's pretty incredible what happens. It's an ultra scary, suspenseful, wonderful movie. I mean, I hold this in very high regard. It's well acted, it's well written, at times it's really disturbing and terrifying. I can't say enough good things about this movie. If you've never seen The First Power, go out and see it. I couldn't recommend the other ones anymore. Like, this is definitely one you should check out if you've never seen The First Power. Jeff Kober is absolutely awesome in the role. He is scary and chilling. He has this stare that just, he looks right through you, you know? And he was a guest on The Walking Dead, I think, early on, probably in like season 3, I want to say, or something. And he was really good in that role, too. It was great to see him back on the screen there. But I knew him from The First Power, and he was so damn good in this. Lou Diamond Phillips is excellent as well. But if you want to see an intriguing, good story and something that is quite scary and chilling, check out The First Power. It's pretty badass. Can't recommend this one enough. Okay, so moving on to the 14th of 15. This one is another one that I hold in very high regard that is incredibly underrated. This one is called Session 9. Now, I don't know how many of you have actually seen this, but it seems very few people even know this exists. This is a very, very underrated, creepy, terrifying mindfuck of a film. I really, really like this. I bought this as soon as it came out. I had to have a copy of it because it completely tripped me out and it scared me and it was disturbing. Actually, Sean Clark is one of the only guys I've ever heard of even talk about this movie, and he was saying the same thing, how underrated it is. But he did a Horrors Hollow Grounds episode for this movie. I'm sure it's on YouTube on his channel there. But hopefully they're going to put together some awesome 4K version eventually here, and that will be on the disc. This movie is really, really creepy. Like, there are scenes in it that will just make your skin crawl. These sessions are on tape recorder, so if you've heard a vintage tape recorder, they usually sound a little funny. Sometimes they speed up or slow down a little bit, and the voices distort, you know, or it's like, you know, like when you say hello, hello. So you hear stuff like that every now and then, and it's disturbing. It just makes you go, oh, fuck, you know, like it's really creepy. It's a really good movie. I mean, it's got David Caruso's in it, Josh Lucas is in it. It is really disturbing, and I cannot recommend it enough because nobody knows about it. But if you want to see something that is going to probably scare you and disturb you a bit, check out Session 9. This movie just has this constant feeling of dread and confusion. I found it to be really, really impressive. One of my favorite horror movies of all time, actually, and certainly my favorite psychological horror. So if you've never seen Session 9, get out and see this thing. And look at just some of the quotes on the back. From Andrew Johnston from Us Weekly. Deliciously disturbing, the most terrifying psychological chillers since the Blair Witch Project. Honestly, I found this quite a bit scarier than the Blair Witch Project, but I love the Blair Witch Project as well. But that is not an underrated one, whereas this one absolutely is. So many people have no idea this even exists, but if you've never seen it, do yourself a favor, go and watch Session 9. Okay, and last but not least, this is one of my all-time favorites. I've talked about it a little bit here and there over the years, but this is one, again, that came out in about 1986. I believe its first release was New Year's Eve in 85, but it got an official release a month or so later or something. But it is Kevin S. Tenney's Witchboard. This is one that is crazy underrated in my opinion. There is a billion different Ouija and Witchboard type movies out there, and I know most of them are rather cheese, but this one, in my opinion, is brilliant. I think this is a brilliant movie. I love the way it's shot. The floaty, ghost-like camera sequences really made my skin crawl. The score is just haunting and disturbing and just make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It was creepy as hell. It really creeped me out. And it has an abundance of really gnarly jump scares too that you're not expecting. And you know, misdirection ones where you're thinking, oh my God, something's gonna happen, and then it kind of doesn't, and you're like, oh shit, and then bam, and you're like, oh my God, it's that kind of shit, you know. So those always get people, you know, jump scares, but it's not just jump scares. It's also really eerie mood and camera work, and you know, like the audio score. It's really creepy, and it stars Todd Allen, Stephen Nichols from, what is it, Days of Our Lives, I think it is he's on. He was on General Hospital. So he's in it. And of course, Tawny Katane is in it. We lost her just a little over a year ago, sadly. Anyway, it is a great movie. And I think it is massively underrated. I think this could be one of the scariest movies out there. Like, in my opinion, it's one of the scariest movies ever made. But you have to kind of set the mood if you're going to watch something like this and you want to appreciate its scariness and all that camera work and that beautiful score. Honestly, if you've never seen this, do me a favor. And if you decide to give this a try and watch it, make sure you watch it in total darkness and in total silence. Don't have any talking, any background music. Really submerge yourself into the story. Listen to that score. Feel it. You know what I mean? I swear, if you do that, it's going to creep you out. It's going to make you go, oh my God, because there's some real scenes that just are scary, you know? I think it is highly underrated and doesn't get anywhere near the love it deserves. Like, I have loved this movie since it came out. It really scared the shit out of me when I first saw it. And years afterwards, it was always very high up on my list, and still is to this day on some of the scariest movies I've ever seen. But again, the setting has a lot to do with it. Check out Witchboard, 1986. Badass movie. All right, so there you have it. There is 15 choices that I put together for some of the most underrated or underappreciated films, or maybe some films you have never even heard of before. So I hope you found a couple new ones at least in there and go and check them out, or maybe you have seen some of these and you have you know, a different opinion on it or the same or whatever. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know what I missed. I know there's a lot of underrated horror out there, and they really deserve more time in the sun. So if I forgot some other ones that I probably should have put in there, let me know. I know there's a whole bunch of other ones I thought of, and I was just trying to keep the numbers down. And like I said, I couldn't put it on 10. I had to go a little bit over, and I thought, all right, 15. But I didn't want to do 20. I mean, God, this video will never end if I do that. But anyway, let me know again what you think in the comments, and we will see you again for another video.